So we have agreed with Rana that we will split the presentation in two parts. I will start saying, again, the more political things related to the pilot, and then Rana will jump in with the technical details, which I guess are much more interesting than whatever I'm going to say. So why a pilot? This is kind of sum up of things that have been said already yesterday. Some of the slides I will jump through because I mentioned already things yesterday. These are some of the reasons why we are doing the pilot. So we are doing the pilot because we have to overcome challenges, and that's the reason why we didn't start with the policy from day one. Challenges are related to data. France know very well because they have started before us and they are already working a lot on that. So there are issues related to data availability. There are issues related to data quality. And these are issues that goes beyond the European borders, because production of good data is something that is already difficult enough for companies who have been doing that for 20 years. Imagine how it would look like for developing countries who are trying to enter market, and that which might see this as a new, very difficult to overcome barrier to trade. So there are issues there related to data quality, data availability. We are working on that also in terms of capacity building in collaboration with UNEP and other international organizations. Then there is the need to develop PCR. I mean, PEF as alone can produce something, but as I said yesterday, most of the good things will come out from the development of PCR and organizational sector rules. But this is something that even if we know that is possible, I mean, ISO 14025 has proven itself the concept. So it is possible to develop these rules. There are some specificities related to PEF, which entails that we have to test different way and different features in process making, and that's why this will be one of the objectives of the pilot. Then involvement of stakeholders, SME, developing countries, they all need to be put at the center of the stage, because in most cases they will be also among the principal users of the results. Then there is this need for simplification, which, as I said yesterday, doesn't mean to be simplistic, but means to be user-friendly. The verification system, which I will also mention later, and then the work that we have started at international level, the discussion in the context of the other initiatives, the discussion with the governments, the very positive collaboration with certain big initiatives like the Sustainability Consortium, the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, and many more. The excellent talk that we're having with the Japanese government, for example, is something that I'm really happy to be involved in. As I said yesterday, three objectives: test the process, test the verification, test the communication. The pilot can be, here we are talking about product, but of course similar things apply also to organizations. The pilot can be on final product, but the pilot can also be on intermediate products, or even on raw materials extraction, for example. Several mining companies already got in touch with us asking, can we apply also for the pilot? The answer is yes. Differently from the first pilot that we ran, there is no obligation to do both the PEF and the OEF pilot. So you will be able to choose which one you want to do. Of course, if you want to do both, that is possible, but it's not a precondition. What will be the role of PCR? Well, this is nothing different from what already happens in all the EPD system and the system which are based on PCR, even for carbon or for multi-criteria. So the role of the PCR basically is to define the rule of the game in details, is to define the calculation rules, is to provide the secondary data, at least it will have to provide secondary data also in our scheme, and it is to make the future comparability of information possible, at least to enable the possibility of having future comparability. If you ask me, are you sure 100% that by having a single PCR you will be able to always compare things? Probably my answer is, I'm not sure. I cannot guarantee that. I cannot put my hand on the fire. I'm absolutely sure that without an harmonized PCR, you will never be able to compare anything. The other way around is not sure. It has to be confirmed. That's why we are doing the pilot. Disclosure and communication. We already mentioned this to some extent yesterday. We say When it comes to business to consumer, B2C, we will identify through the PCR development process the 3-4 most relevant impact categories, and we will ask the stakeholders to tell us, how do you think that you can best communicate this information to your stakeholders, to your consumers? Is it through a label on the product? Is it through information on the shelf? It is through website? It is through QR code? All possibles will be open. We will ask them to identify the 3 or 4 that best work, and then in the third part of the pilot, in collaboration with retailers, we will test those on real products and see how people react in practice. So it will not be the Commission to decide how to communicate. Again, I want to stress this because one of the criticism I often receive, among many, is that the Commission wants to impose a new label. And, and I have to record to shut this down. So we are not going to impose a new label per se. Labeling, as I said yesterday, again, I want to re-stress that is only one of the possible options and is not always the best one. It will be industry, member states, NGOs to tell us when labeling is the best solution. The details about the communication part of the pilot, you will not find them in the documents that will be published now. Because now the focus will be more on the first part of the pilot, on the PCR development stage. We want also to talk more with the other initiatives, to learn from them what they think about communication. We want to work closely with the Food Initiative because they have been doing a lot of work on communication. There was one working group specifically working on that. So before taking any final decision on how to set up that part, we want to discuss more also with France. We are waiting for the results of the report. So that's why we are not providing all the information at this stage. In the guidance for the implementation of the pilot, which will be the main document for those working during the next 3 years, you will see listed some possible way of communicating the information that you will gather through a PEF or through an OEF. For products, we identified 4 possible ways of using that information. This is external communication report, where basically a company in a report says which are the performance of that product against the PEF criteria. A performance tracking report, which is as the one before, but with a time dimension included. So you will say, okay, in time, within the last 5 years, my product has changed from this point to that point in terms of environmental performance. You will have the possibility of having a PEF declaration, which is the equivalent of the EPD, basically, or a PEF label. And again, how this label will look like, we haven't defined it yet. We have done a study, and a couple of presentations yesterday were referring to that study. That is a good starting point. It's not the ending point. But it gives already some insights in terms of how a label might look like from the content point of view. Which open an interesting point for me, where I'm hearing different opinions, which I find difficult to find a synthesis. Because on one side, there is industry coming to me and saying, please don't decide how we have to communicate because we know our business, we want to decide how to communicate, which I fully understand. And I personally don't think that the Commission should be too imposive on that side. Then on the other side, I have retailers and others telling me, oh, but if you don't standardize the way to communicate, it's going to be a mess. Because then you lose the learning process, you create more confusion to people because then they will see a lot of different ways of communicating the same thing. So again, I don't know where to turn my head. I don't know where the truth is. Truth is on both sides. The difficulties will be to find a synthesis of these different needs. But again, we will think about that. We will work with them to see if we can find a synthesis. In terms of organizational environmental footprint, of course, you don't have a label. You will have the external communication report and the performance tracking report. These are starting point for communication. if industry will come out with different ideas, or if during the pilot we will have different insights, of course, this is a live document. This can be changed even on a daily basis, because this is not part of the communication which has gone through the classical political approval process. So to change this is much, much easier than to change the recommendation or one of its annexes, the methodologies, which again something we will do, but at the end of the pilot there will be revision of the methodologies, of the methods. So this is in terms of how you might communicate. Let's talk a bit about verification. I mentioned yesterday there is an ongoing study on verification in order to identify the 3 or 4 systems that might work. These are the references of the study. It is an ongoing one, so if you want to get in touch with the people running the study to get more information, you will find here the name of the people. So Biointelligence Service is in the leadership, together with IEP and Ecologic. You should be able to find information on the website. If you don't, just drop me an email and I will send you the contact person for this project. Which are the objectives of this project? They are, as I said yesterday, reviewing existing systems. They will define which are the mechanisms that a future system should have in order to be effective. They will make a first estimation of the average cost for the different options. They will assess their rate of reliability, because again, one of the criticisms I receive is that they say, okay, but you will never be able to develop a system which guarantees you that the information that you find is correct. Which is a nice way of criticizing something, but let's do a reality check. Is there any policy, existing one, not only Europe, also outside Europe, that guarantees that the policy is respected 100%? I mean, if we start doing some analysis, are we sure that Energy Star is 100% reporting the truth? Well, if you hear what happened in the United States some time ago, then you realize that there was a rate of cheating quite high there. And the same we know is true for Energy Label, the same is true for Eco-Design, for Eco-Label. I mean, we know that there is no policy tool that guarantees 100% reliability. So why they should ask us 100% of reliability? The point there is to find what's the percentage of unreliability which is tolerable and still to rely on a certain policy tool. And then they will provide recommendation on, of course, on options for PEF and OEF. Particular emphasis, as I said, is on the issue of embedded, indirect impacts, land use, ecotoxicity, whatever is not directly measurable from the product. And then they are looking at verification of data, traceability, conformity assessment, which is the ex-ante part of the verification, which usually is up on the shoulders of industry, and market surveillance, which is usually something that member states do after the product has been put on the market. Now let's go back to the pilot. As I mentioned yesterday, first round of pilots, I was still optimistic when I wrote this slide. I said April 2013. It's not going to be April. I hope it's May. I'm sure it's May. There will be no food, feed, and drink included in the first round, because as I explained yesterday, this will be done jointly with the Food Roundtable starting next year. I put beginning of 2014 as a tentative timeline for this second wave. Of course, this has to be confirmed with the Food Roundtable, because as we want to do that together, I mean, we have to take a common decision when we will launch this second wave. In order to fit with our overall timeline, we would really hope that the second call will be launched in the first quarter of 2014, not later than that. And this second one, as I said yesterday, open to food, feed and drink, and depending on resources available, possibly also open to some sectors and products that were not covered enough during the first pilot. Who can propose a pilot? Alors, we have a list of possible entities that can propose a pilot. So it can be a single company, it can be a cluster of companies. We don't mention the word consortium because a consortium, someone told me, that has some legal implications and burden that we don't want to put on companies. So let's talk of a group of companies or a cluster of companies. It can be an industry association at national, European or international level. It can be an NGO. It can be a member states or a non-European governments. So this is the answer that I promised to Michael yesterday, one of the many. Switzerland is not a member state, yes, but it is a government, a non-EU government, so they can propose a pilot being in the leadership or not, if they fulfill also all the other requirements that will be there. I was in Paris with Mark about 1 month ago, and I got a question from a representative of the Chinese government asking if China can lead a pilot or a Chinese company can lead a pilot. And the answer is yes. If they fulfill all the other requirements, everyone on this planet can propose a pilot. It can be universities or research institutions, international organizations like UNEP, like OECD or others, or, and this is probably, I would say, the best solution, a mix of the different players that we listed there. And when you will have the application package in front of you, you will see that there will be two options. You can propose to be a leader, and you can propose to be a proponent. I mean, you can be a proponent or a participant. That has, of course, implications in terms of workload, in terms of resources, but the two options are available. Those who will propose to be leaders, if the pilot is accepted, of course, they will lead the pilot, and the Commission will only be there supporting and being part of the process, but will not play any active role. For those who do not want to be leader, but still they think that developing a PFCR or a sector rules for that product sector is valuable, for those, the Commission will choose which are the ones that we can lead ourselves. The three that I was mentioning yesterday, and if I manage to convince Rana, maybe more, but this is under discussion. Please lobby with him for that. Okay, this is, here we will spend some minutes. This is the governance of the system. And so where we can start from. I will start from here. Let's start from the top. The steering committee will be the organism that will overlook at all the pilot phase during these 3 years. It will be the conflict resolution body, and it will be the body who will ensure harmonization among the different pilots. Let's give one example of a situation that probably the steering committee will have to face. Let's imagine that we will have pilots on 2 product groups which share some elements of the supply chain. Now, for sake of consistency, we said along the supply chain, when it comes to allocation, they should use the same allocation rules. And let's imagine that in one pilot, a certain part of the supply chain choose to adopt a certain allocation rule, and in another pilot, the same part of the supply chain choose to adopt a different allocation rule. This is one potential situation where the things have to be aligned, and this kind of discussion will take place, if not solved at the operational level, will be moved up to the steering committee level. So who will be sitting in the steering committee? Member States representative. What we have been discussing is to use a group of members, representative of member states, which has already been working in SCP for the past 5 years or so. So there is a group called IPP SCP, which stands for Integrated Product Policy, Sustainable Consumption Production, where all 27, soon 28 member states representatives are sitting, and there are also non-EU governments like Switzerland, like Norway, who have a seat in this body. So from the member states representative point of view, the proposal of the Commission will be to use this group of people. Then there will be, of course, the Commission who will chair the steering committee. Then we will have one representative from each pilot. In principle, the leader of the technical secretariat will have also a seat in the steering committee. There will be representative of the main stakeholder groups, so NGOs in terms of both consumer organizations and environmental organizations, and representative of small medium enterprises association. So these, which are usually seen as the weak part in terms, because they don't have the same resources as big industries, but they are extremely important in terms of the final results of the process. They will have seats guaranteed in the steering committee. And as I said, in terms of objectives of the steering committee task, approvals, monitoring, and conflict resolution. As the steering committee will mainly be, I would say, a political body, in order to take some decision, they will need technical competence, and that's why we said they will be able to appoint technical expert in the technical advisory board. So the more technical discussion will happen in the technical advisory board, and then the information will be moved to the steering committee. And again, the idea there is that each representative of the steering committee can appoint one person to be part of the technical advisory board, and this person doesn't need to be always the same. So depending on the issue discussed on the agenda, Germany will appoint a certain person, France will appoint a different person, Friends of Earth, if it will be in the board, will appoint a different technical expert. Then we go to the real work, the PCR development. The technical secretariat will be the people who will propose to lead the process. You remember the slides where there was the list of potential actors. They will be the technical secretariat. And then later I will explain what the technical secretariat is expected to do. They will have basically to work with all the stakeholders. And as for ISO 14025, the process will be multi-stakeholder, open to all contributions. A lot of things will happen on the web because we want to minimize the number of physical meetings in order to reduce cost and to increase the possibility of participating also for players not based in Brussels. There will be rules on how representative these stakeholders have to be and how representative these people have to be, and I will have slides later on that. The technical secretariat will work directly with the stakeholders and will interact with the upper level of the governance through the technical help desk. So the technical help desk will play a key role in this pilot because they will help the pilots to interpret the methodology. I mean, they will be the only one allowed to interpret, not the consultants which are doing that for the time being. They will help the Commission providing feedback and the steering committee. They will act as data manager, as I said yesterday, in order to avoid leakage of information and disclosure of confidential information. They will be the only ones who will have direct access to the confidential information. And they will, I have also slides later to explain all the other things that this technical help desk will do. So this is how the governance will look like. Now let's talk about representativeness. This is one of the things which separate us from the EPD system, where there are not clear representativeness conditions. We wanted to introduce that because for us it's extremely important that we avoid that one big player come on the floor and basically they draw the rules around the specific product, and then all the others will have to use that. I mean, that would be extremely unacceptable from a competitiveness point of view. So what we said is, okay, we have 4 conditions, basically, that we will check before accepting a pilot and during the life of the pilot to be sure that they are maintained during the whole life cycle. First condition, whoever will be the leader, they will have to invite to participate at least 75% of the EU market in terms of turnover. The words have been carefully selected. When I said invite, it doesn't mean that 75% has to come to Brussels or participate in meetings. It means that letters of invitation to participate in the process have to be sent out to representatives of at least 75% of the market, European market, not world market, so that nobody can say I was not aware of this initiative. And this invitation has to be sent to all companies contributing to more than 10% of the market. So you cannot just by chance forget your major competitors. Oh, I forgot it. No, if he has more than 10%, he has to be invited. Then, and this is in terms of invitation, then we will have to be sure that during the whole process, which means from day 1 until the last day of the communication part, so it's not only about PCR development, it's about the entire process, at least 51% of the market has participated actively, which means they provided feedback, written form, they came to meetings to discuss things, so they have contributed somehow. And this percentage has to be, again, at EU market level in terms of turnover. Another condition in order to accept the pilot is that all the different stakeholders will be also part of the group. So you cannot just forget about, I don't know, consumer association just because they have been very tough towards you, so you will not invite them. No, that's not allowable. No, that's not acceptable. You cannot forget SMEs. That again will be the challenge, how to involve SMEs, not only in the discussion but also in the practical testing of the things. So they have to be involved. And then there will be another condition that I probably will mention in a different slide. So what does the technical secretariat? Why do we think that industry has a lot of gain and not so much to lose in proposing to be a technical secretariat? First thing, which maybe it's not politically correct to say, but you know, you have learned from me that I'm not so much politically correct. They will hold the pen. And holding the pen, I mean, yes, it's a stakeholder process, it's a dialogue, everyone will contribute, but at the end of the day, the one who holds the pen has some, let's call it power, on how you write things. And as I was saying to a company which came to me and said, but we don't see why we should participate in this pilot. My first immediate reply was, do you prefer that someone else will tell you how you have to work in the future, or you prefer to contribute actively into that? Do you want someone else to shape your future, or do you want to shape it yourself? So that would be my first reaction, why it is convenient to hold the pen. But of course, this is the good part, and there is the bad part, this is the work. You have also to work. So what the work is, you will have to do the technical work, which means what Rana will soon explain you. Defining the representative product, do the PEF screening, draft the PFCR, do the supporting studies, find the benchmarking. I mean, it's a lot of things which have implications in terms of resources. Don't be, I mean, we know that, and we don't know how much, so don't ask me how much it's going to cost. I have some rough estimation based on previous experiences done in Europe and outside Europe, but we don't have an exact number at the second decimal. That I don't have yet. They will have, of course, to lead the discussion, to chair meetings, to organize the meetings, and also they will have to manage the comments received. What we will do for all the pilots where we will not be in the lead, we will support this technical help desk, which, as you will see in another slide, will do a lot of things. We will support the logistics of the meetings, so all the meetings that will be organized in Brussels, we will try to provide meeting rooms. I can even promise some coffee. The quality, I'm not going to discuss that, but there will be coffee. We will, and this is quite important, and this was, to me, one of those indicators that policymakers at our level are committed. Because I wasn't sure that I was able to secure the money for the verification, because verification can become a costly issue. And I really didn't want to ask industry to pay for that, because that would have been unfair. So what I managed to convince my senior level we should provide the money. We should pay for that because industry is helping us. And that was done. So we were able to secure the money to pay the verification. So all the verification done within the pilot will not be paid by industry, but will be paid by Commission money. And then we are developing tools to support the user. And probably, this is another fight I'm doing. I cannot commit to that, but we will probably also cover most of the costs during the communication part of the test. So the social behavioral studies related to that, we will try to cover with Commission funding. Now, what the help desk will do? As you see, the list is quite long, as it is not exhaustive. They will provide assistance to the piloters and to the Commission teams in terms of asking and answering to questions. And those who have been participating in the first pilot, they know that that was quite valuable. To have someone that you can send an email to and get a reply within 2 or 3 days on technical issues was very valuable. And we were lucky enough on the first pilot that we had an excellent consulting companies doing that work for us, and that really helped a lot. They will provide face-to-face training to all stakeholders on the methods, and then they will provide face-to-face training only on the companies which will do the implementation of the draft PFSR and OFSR. They will provide at least 5 webinars based on things that stakeholders want to learn. What we did last time, again, was we will send some kind of doodle system where we asked, what do you want to learn more about these methods? And then we organized webinar on those specific issues. They will provide an offline e-learning package on PFSR and OFSR development in 3 languages. English and French is obligatory, mandatory, and then they can choose one among Spanish, Portuguese, German, Polish, and Italian. Now, don't ask me why we have chosen those languages. I think there are some reasons in terms of number of users, and especially when you go to developing countries where many of them speak Spanish and Portuguese, then it's kind of a way of entering and helping them. And Italian is not just because I'm Italian. Maybe. Then they will act as data managers, as data center. They will have to set up a web commenting tool. This web commenting tool will be using a wiki system that we have developed at Commission level, so they will not have to manage all the comments, but they will have to prepare the page so that then the technical secretariat will be able to manage the tool. They will provide support to the Commission during the verification phase. Basically, they will help us to analyze the audit reports that the verifiers will send us. And they will help us at the end for the evaluation of the pilot phase, not the external contract that I mentioned yesterday, but more the internal evaluation. Call for tender has been published 19th of April, deadline 4th of June. It has been published on the electronic version of the official journal. You should be able to find the link. If you don't, drop me an email and I will send it. The timing. I don't know if Rana, you're going to talk about timing? No. Well, I don't want to go in details. The things I want to just mention are those highlighted. There will be 2 meetings, physical consultation meeting. One more or less at the beginning, where the scope and the definition of the representative product will be discussed and agreed, which should take place after 3 months the pilot is started. And as a last one, a second one, when the final results will be discussed, and then should take place around month 22. Now, my estimation for a process starting from scratch, so where there is not so much experience, it should take place in 24 months. Now, you will tell me, oh, that's too long. Ask Ranapant and he will tell you, oh, it's too short. So it is kind of a compromise in terms of timing. This is a tentative schedule. I mean, you will not be binded to that, but of course, we want to see if it's possible to come out with something valuable in 2 years. And again, 2 years might look like a long time, but if we think how long it takes currently to develop eco-design criteria, we are on the average of 5 years, maybe something like that. Eco-label, 2 years, 2 years and a half, and eco-label is much easier than this. Eco-design is not. So if we were really able to find a way to stay, my original target was 18 months, and then again, it's his fault if it went up to 24. I think with time, we'll be able to get to 18 months, probably, but probably we should start with 24. I was already too long, so that was my last question. Now I think the floor goes to Rana. Thank you.